If you've just joined us this evening, let's recap for you. We do have breaking news on two fronts. The first is that Michael Voss has been sacked by the Brisbane Lions. We weren't expecting that today. We'll talk more about that as it comes to hand. But these are the charges against the Bombers. Bringing the game into disrepute under Rule 1.6 of the AFL rules. James Hird, Mark Thompson, Danny Corcoran and Dr Bruce Reid have been charged, as well as the football club. The players have not been charged and there are no infraction notices at this stage against the players, and that is a key point. There will be a hearing into the charges at AFL House on the 26th of August. That is a Monday in a couple of weeks' time. And of course, Andrew Dillon says that the AFL ASADA investigation, that joint investigation, is ongoing, and there's really no time frame for when that might end.
And as Richard Innings said, and as we said ourselves, we need clarity now from the official drug agency bodies, ASADA initially, and then WADA, as to its take on the AFL's decision tonight to go public with no infraction notices, at this stage anyway, being issued against players. It is encouraging, though, that this seems to be the first step in the final phase of this saga. I think that's the main thing to take out of tonight. Potentially, again, the ASADA investigation open, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a negotiation phase now for them, and look, things will move before they convene on August 26th. There will be that hearing on August 26th, regardless, but there will be toing and froing for both parties. Yeah, a very, very interesting scenario this evening. Now, I think we can bring you a replay of Andrew Dillon's statement. If you are just joining us this evening, Andrew Dillon, who is the AFL's General Counsel, fronted the cameras probably about 20 minutes ago now. That's how long we've been on the air. We came on the air at about 7:15 Melbourne time with the news on Michael Voss. Andrew Dillon fronted the cameras about 7:30. It was a very brief statement, but nevertheless the one that we'd been waiting all day for. Let's have a listen, if we can, to what he had to say.
I can confirm today that the Essendon Football Club, James Hird, Danny Corcoran, Bruce Reid and Mark Thompson have been charged under the AFL rules in relation to the supplements program at the club in 2011-2012. They were all charged with engaging in conduct that is unbecoming or likely to prejudice the interests or reputation of the Australian Football League, or to bring the game of football into disrepute, contrary to AFL Rule 1.6. I have reviewed the evidence, carefully considered the matter, and have come to the view that the parties charged have a case to answer. The parties have been informed of the charges, and that a hearing of the charges is scheduled to be held on the 26th of August 2013 at AFL House. In relation to the Essendon players, I can advise that, although WADA has declared AOD 9604 is a banned substance, on the information currently before the AFL, there is no specific anti-doping rule violation attributed to any individual player for the use of AOD 9604 or any other prohibited substance. As such, at the present time, there will be no infraction notices issued under the AFL Anti-Doping Code. I note the investigation into Essendon's 2011-2012 supplements program by ASADA and the AFL remains open and could lead to further charges under the AFL rules against other individuals. Infraction notices under the AFL Anti-Doping Code against individual Essendon players or other persons could also result if further information comes to hand. All parties charged will be provided with every reasonable opportunity to respond to these matters before the AFL Commission prior to any determinations being made. With this matter now scheduled to be heard by the AFL Commission on the 26th of August, the AFL will be restricting further comment on this matter until that time. Thanks very much for your time.
That's AFL General Counsel Andrew Dillon speaking at AFL House in Melbourne about 20 minutes or so ago with the news of charges against the Essendon Football Club and 4 key people. Let's recap this evening's developments for you, beginning with information on those charges and the key people who have been charged: James Hird, the coach, Dr Bruce Reid, also Mark Thompson and Danny Corcoran, the football manager. The rule that they've been charged under is this, Rule 1.6, and we want to be really specific about reading this phrase, this paragraph of Rule 1.6 out to you this evening. It involves a player or an official who has been involved in conduct which is unbecoming or likely to prejudice the interests or reputation of the AFL or to bring the game of football into disrepute. And as we mentioned, Damo, very wide-ranging powers that the AFL has in this instance.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want, as we've said, about that particular rule matter. As they've announced tonight, though, it will be the AFL Commission which hears the case. They clearly do, under those rules, allow it to be any person they deem fit to hold that particular trial, but it will be the Commission as it stands. And rest assured, that'll be part of Essendon's defence or adamant nature about itself, that it isn't wrong for the AFL to be investigating this case with ASADA to then come down with the charges and then to sit in judgment. The AFL will say the Commission is an independent body, but Essendon will say it's all one and the same. When you've got Andrew Demetrio involved, at pretty much all levels. But that's their legal argument, and that's one they'll have play out from now.
What do you think the chances are of us actually ending up in court on this one, as it stands right now?
As it stands right now, massive. I mean, they've been threatening Supreme Court action from basically day one of this, once it got serious in their eyes, and certainly the transfer of power from David Evans as chairman to Paul Little, it's actually just ramped up the possibilities of that. And I'd be very surprised if that's not threatened. And I know it's been threatened, and I'd be very surprised if it isn't threatened again before August 26.
All right, a summary of things as they stand. Essendon charged with bringing the game into disrepute. James Hird, Mark Thompson, Danny Corcoran and Dr Bruce Reid are the key figures that have been charged as well with bringing the game into disrepute. The players have not been charged. There are no infraction notices at this stage, although, as Richard Ings said to us a little earlier here on AFL.com.au, we really need to hear ASADA's response on that, and so far we don't have any response from ASADA. The hearing is on the 26th of August. That's a Monday, and of course we'll have coverage of that for you, and the ASADA investigation remains open. But Cal, just recapping an earlier point, I think the players and the fans would be pretty relieved hearing those words from Andrew Dillon this evening.
There'll be enormous relief, and they'll be able to go to the footy on Saturday night with a little bit of hope that some things are clearer than they were previously in the last sort of month or so, particularly.
All right, we are chasing John Fay, the boss of WADA. If we get any news from him, you'll read about it on afl.com.au this evening. For now, one final thought from you, Damien Barrett. Is what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks, do you think, before the hearing, or will things quieten down a little bit?
Oh, well, both parties there have actually said and made it very public they're not going to be uttering any observations on this particular matter from here on in until August 26. The charges have been laid. I think everything has been said that can be said. There will be legal posturing, and there may well be, for all we know, a legal threat coming from Essendon about this particular hearing and who actually sits in on judgment on the 4 gentlemen in question. And just to recap that Essendon argument on that front, and it is one that they're playing behind the scenes through their legal people, that the AFL is the body that sat in on the investigations with ASADA. It's also the body that has now laid the charges officially tonight. And by extension, its own commission will be the person now determining sanctions. There's a legal argument that they are delving into and looking into very seriously, that you cannot have the same body doing all 3 things. And while we understand and acknowledge that the commission is independent of the AFL administration operations, in a legal sense, it's one that Essendon is pursuing.
Damien, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Damien Barrett and Callum Toomey, thank you as well. Well, that's just about does it for us. Before we go, we should mention the other breaking news this evening, that Michael Voss has been sacked as coach of the Brisbane Lions. We talked about that off the top. Now, there is a news conference scheduled in Brisbane for midday tomorrow. We'll continue to follow that story as well for you here on afl.com.au. The news on Essendon tonight is that the club has been charged with bringing the game into disrepute, as well as James Hird, Mark Thompson, Bruce Reid and Danny Corcoran. For now, for the entire team here at afl.com.au, for Damien Barrett and Callum Toomey, I'm Matt Thompson. Good night.